my audio levels are working. All right. How about now? My audio levels there we go. Are working. All right. All right. How about now? Okay. There we go. Sounds good. Okay. So I want to thank you for joining today. Sorry about the the lack of audio at the beginning of the stream. Let's see. I am also trying to get our image up here. So unfortunately, it's just a black screen. Typically, when I'm recording, I can. Let's see. Typically, when I'm recording, can you hear me now, Natasha? Hopefully, you should be able to hear now. Typically, when I'm recording, you guys can see a little icon on the screen, like a little book of hours icon that sort of pulsates. Unfortunately, that is not coming up. So it's just a black screen right now. Oh, it's always something, isn't it, with these live streams? It seems like there have been some more challenges lately, and I'm sure anybody can guess why that is. Right? Yeah, no picture, no puppy, nothing. I'm sorry about that. That's what I was just saying is that. Hang on one sec. So when you see that screen, you can't hear me when I do this. Unfortunately, that mutes the sound. So I can try it, like the little pulsating Book of Hours logo, but it's not coming through, and I don't know why. So let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not coming through. Well, I am going to be doing some screen shares. So there's some things on Twitter that I'm going to share. First thing I want to do, though, is I want to talk about a situation that took place on August 4th here at our house in Pittsburgh. As you know, we're in the middle of transitioning out of Pittsburgh to a small area in the Gulf Coast that's considered the secret coast. We found something that we could basically afford if we're very careful. And I'm glad that you're gardening, Natasha. That sounds wonderful. And I hope that it turns out well. That's wonderful. So on August 4th, my husband and I were sitting on the couch and we were going over some of the things that we need to do for the new house. The new house was built in the 1940s and it was renovated in the 1950s. And so all of the features in the house, from the wallpaper to the carpet to even the stove to everything in the house, is very dated. But it's a little time capsule. It survived Hurricane Katrina. It survived Hurricane Ida. It has no water damage. There's nothing like that. So we needed to put in new floors. We needed to pull down the wallpaper, kind of sandblast the walls, repaint the walls, and do all sorts of stuff. So it takes a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money, as I'm sure you can imagine. And so we were sitting on the couch at our Pittsburgh house, and we were kind of going over the different things that we need to do to upgrade the new house and what's still involved. We have another trip out there coming up where we're going to spend some time there working on it. And we had actually found some beautiful lamps that are going to go in the master bedroom. They're going to hang from the wall. And it's a very specific type of lamp that's needed in a very small space. So not a lot of there were not a lot of options out there, but we found something and it was on sale. And so we purchased it and it was finally delivered to us and we were admiring it. And I was thinking, and I was looking at them and I was really admiring them. And I was saying, these are much nicer than I thought they would be. I mean, you know how sometimes you buy something, it's not that expensive, and then it kind of looks cheap and you're like, well, I guess it'll do. This actually looks a lot more, quality than what we paid. So I was extremely pleased. And all of a sudden, we were looking at these things, we were talking about the upgrades of the house, and all of a sudden we heard a crash around the corner in our kitchen. So our living room, and this is in our Pittsburgh house. Our living room is um, sort of at the front of the house, and then we have this big room which most people would use as a dining room, but we use it as a studio to do these live streams and also to work on our video essay work and to write and be creative and do artwork and things like that. And then attached to that through a little doorway is the kitchen. So we heard some crashing in the kitchen. And so we assumed it was the cat. And I said, "Oh my God, what was that, JP?" And he said, "Oh, it's just the cat. She probably jumped up onto the table and knocked something over. She does that. She likes to jump all over the boxes that we have stacked up all over the place and jump on things and jump down. And, she's always jumping in and out of the windows." But it sounded pretty intense, like something had fallen over. It sounded much more than just the cat, jumping off the table or something. So he went to take a look. He said, "Well, let me go look." So he walked, from the living room through the studio and into the kitchen. And next thing I know, he's picking up this giant stick that we keep by the back door because our kitchen leads to the backyard. So there's a door you go through. And he said, "What are you doing in my house? Get the fuck out of my house." So I immediately knew that there was a problem. And so without hesitation and without panicking, I called 911. And um, and JP, of course, he's kind of a punk at heart. You know what I mean? He was in a band. He, you know what I mean? He's kind of a, don't let the professionalism and how smart he is and how well put together he is fool you. He's kind of a badass, and he's kind of wiry, and he was a swimmer when he was younger, and he's a cyclist, so he tries to keep in shape. So he was holding the stick and he was like, "Get the fuck out of my house. Get out of my house. Get out of my house." Well, next thing you know, this young man was running all around our house, and he was having some kind of bad reaction to a bad trip. Yes, JP is streetwise. Thank you, Venus. Yeah, absolutely. He's very streetwise, even though he doesn't really look it. So I called 911, and this kid was running around our house. He was crawling under our desk. He was jumping on things. He was basically having a bad trip. But I did not get a sense that he was there to rob us. I didn't get a malevolent sense about the situation at all. He kept saying over and over again, "I'm scared. I'm afraid. They're after me. Please help me." And I kept trying to have a rational conversation with him. And it's impossible to have a rational conversation with someone when they are on a bad trip and they've just jumped in through your open window and into your home, and they're running around. So when I called the police, said 911, "What is your emergency?" And I said, and this is exactly my tone when I was talking to the police, "We have an intruder. Address, please." I gave them the address. "Description of the intruder, please." I gave the description of the intruder. Meanwhile, the intruder is having a really bad trip, and he knows I'm on the phone with the police, and he starts to cry. "Oh, no, no, don't call the police. Don't call the police." And I said to the police officer who was on the phone, to the dispatcher, I said, "I'm going to address the intruder now." And the dispatcher said, "Okay." And I said, "The police are going to come and help you. No one's getting arrested. If you're afraid, then you need protection. I don't have the means to protect you, but the police do. And somewhere in his drug induced fog and somewhere in his drug induced mania, that somehow resonated with him. And so that was my kind voice. And then I said to him, "Now sit down." And he sat down. And the police said, "Ma'am, I have to say you're handling this wonderfully." And he would the dispatcher on the phone was just gushing. He was just like, "You are amazingly in control, and could you please tell me if you feel threatened?" I said, "No, I don't feel threatened at all. This person is not here to rob me or kill me. He is having some kind of a bad trip. He is afraid. He probably felt that um, someone was after him. He saw the light on in our kitchen, and so he came through towards the light." And the officer said, "Okay, well," the dispatcher said, "Okay, well, officers are on the way." And I said, "Would you mind staying on the phone with me until they get here?" And he said, "Absolutely." And he said, once again, he just kept gushing over me. And he kept saying, "Ma'am, I just have to say, I wish more people would handle these kinds of situations the way you're handling it." And so when the police did arrive, I said, "Okay, the police are here now." And the dispatcher basically said, "Okay, well, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you." And we hung up the phone. And the local officer who came over to take the report, um, I'm familiar with him. He's a pretty nice guy. And then there was another officer there to support him. And they said, "Do you want to press charges?" And I said, "No, of course not." This was a very young man, probably somewhere between 18 and say 22, who was just having a bad trip. It was very young and kind of innocent looking. And I think he just got into some bad drugs. And I just, JP, of course, was angry, but then I was able to sort of calm him down a little bit. And he saw how irrational it would have been to try to file charges against this person. And who knows, there would have been a court date. We may have had to follow up. I mean, and all this time and energy would have been spent towards this incident, which I did not feel threatened at all by. I did not feel a shred of fear. Like, I was not afraid of this individual. I felt sorry for him. I felt compassion for him and for whoever he's related to. And so the police said, "Okay, well, they said, "Okay, you need to clean yourself up. You need to go home." And that was that. And it's been super quiet ever since then. Now that took place about a week ago. Right. So somebody is commenting saying that it's voice only. Yeah, for some reason I'm having trouble with pulling in the imagery that you might normally see on this broadcast, which is sometimes the pulsing image of the Book of Hours. But it's just a black screen for now. But I am going to move on into some of the other things that I brought up in the description of this audio broadcast. Thank you, Venus. I appreciate that. You know, I have to say, I've always been kind of the calm, cool, collected uh, person in the midst of chaos and in the midst of terrible situations. It seems as though my whole life I've been that way. Maybe there was a portion of my life where I would panic and things would maybe seem a little, maybe I didn't handle it well, but that was just a very small portion of my life. For the most part, my personality is such that when there is chaos and when there is something really, really bad happening, I'm the person that you kind of want to go to. I'm the one that does not lose my cool. And I think I get it from my mother, who's very very steady in her emotions. Like, she's not a very emotional person. So, and I could tell you a story about her as well, and some of her situation in when she went to, I believe it was in the 90s, she went to Belarus. And the details on this are kind of fuzzy, but her and a group of like missionaries, I think, were thrown in jail into a Belarusian prison, and then somehow Russia got involved and accused them of something. And confiscated their passports, and all these Christian women were having meltdowns, except my mom, who was just very calm, cool, and collected about the whole thing. So anyway, that's, maybe one day I'll be able to get my mom on a podcast and she can talk about her interesting life. Okay, so let's move on to some other interesting topics. Uh, so the situation with Karen Kingston is very concerning. So the thing that brought my attention to it was, I'm going to share a screen here. So now you guys will actually get to see something. And if you are doing something else, it's okay. You don't have to stop what you're doing. This is simply her Substack article. Let me see if I can grab it. Okay, can you guys see that? Where she says on August, I believe it was August 6th, which was her most recent Substack article. So that was about 5 days ago, that she's concerned for her son. All right, so you guys can read that. I encourage you to go to Substack, look up the Kingston report, and rather than going by hearsay or going by what a lot of social media is saying, I would simply go straight to the source itself. If, like, for instance, when it comes to me or JP and you want to know anything about us, come to us. I'm sure there's lots of rumors about us out there. But you would always want to talk to us about, if you have questions, if you want to know our background, if you want to know what we're like. So I'm always reminding people that social media can be such a snake pit, and all of these platforms, all of them, whether they're the right-wing platforms like Truth Social, or they're Twitter/X, or it's Facebook or whatever, they are all so compromised, run by government cutouts who come out of these three-letter agencies like the CIA and all that. So if you are wondering what's going on with an individual, go to their direct sites. And so here's the Kingston report. I'm not going to go into too much detail about her latest post, but it really caught my eye, and it really sort of alarmed me a little bit, because anybody who would write openly that they're concerned for their son tells me that they're putting the more vulnerable individuals before themselves. So I in all of the videos I've watched of her and the interviews that she's given, she always, ends each and every one of her statements with her desire to see, the world or the country. Hello, Tavit. Yay. Nice to see you. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad that you're here. You guys, Tavit is a good friend of mine. He lives in Estonia. And I'm sure, Tavit, if you want to say some things about yourself in the chat, I'm so happy to see that you're here. Um, uh, and it's just so many things are going on in the world. So right now what I'm doing is I'm focusing on this story about this influencer her name is Karen Kingston. And she was basically the very first person to warn us that the COVID shots were not actually vaccines, to be honest. And ever since then, other people have, sort of come into the mix and supported what she said. But for whatever reason, she's being scapegoated, and she's under some kind of strange attack. And so we're very concerned about her. And what alerted us to all of this is this post called Concern for My Son. She is very concerned for her son. Someone apparently made a some sort of CGI version of her son, and it's really disarming to see someone do a fake image or AI around a loved one, isn't it? So this sort of led us into the idea that there's something going on. So in the Substack article, I believe there's some sort of reference to a video that she made. And so let's go and take a look at that. And again, I always want to encourage people to go to the source. And this is the video that she made, and you've all seen it. This is her um, talking about everything that she's been talking about for the last few years, everything we kind of already know. No need to go into too much detail. But she also talks about how she feels that Robert Malone is working against her, or he's using other individuals to work against her. And when she was in Florida working with a small community to inform them of their rights, which is that you can use law enforcement and you can use maybe a local judge to help remove the countermeasures, also known as the COVID-19 vaccines, that you can use these local legal um, uh, policy to support your rights, that you don't necessarily need to have like global tribunals, and you don't necessarily need to have other countries come to your defense and all this stuff. Well, apparently, according to her video that she did here, which has been mirrored hundreds of times and is probably now up to thousands of times being mirrored because everyone's really concerned. According to her own video here on her own Getter page, on Karen Kingston Getter page, it seems as though Robert Malone had a response to this very local, independent way of thinking, which is that you can use local law to support removing weapons from your health facility or from language or contracts that are part of, say, your school system or part of your municipality, right? He apparently said, no, 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 that's not right. And so there was this little scuffle, this little pushback. And, so my position on this is that, I kept asking JP last night when we were looking at the Substack article that she wrote, and then the consequent Getter stream that she shared in the Substack article. Do you believe this? Do you believe any of this? Do you think she's do you think she's overreacting? And he said, no, I believe every word that she's saying. Now you have to understand, we are consummate skeptics over here. We believe very little about what we see. But for now, until more information comes to light, we have no reason to think that this isn't true. So let me know if you guys can still hear me. Let me know if I'm still coming through loud and clear. I want to make sure that the feed is pretty clear. So with that in mind, I want to take you to something that Robert Malone himself tweeted. And I want to try to make a connection with another individual who is critical of Robert Malone. Let's go to his own tweet. All right. Can you see that? Now, Robert Malone is reading a tweet that was published by Karen Kingston's brother. And it says, thank you for your concern for my sister. This is a family matter. And when there is more to share, we will through our contacts. So let's really look at this very simple tweet. This is an individual, this person, Ron Kutchler, I believe is his name, Ron Kutchler, that is Karen Kingston's brother. He is very aware that she is an influencer. He is very aware that there are people on social media who love her and value her. And, there are people out there saying things like, if it weren't for Karen Kingston, I would be thrice jabbed. You know, it was Karen Kingston's video that, appeared on my feed that made me rethink everything. So Karen Kingston has done very good work to help people see for themselves what they need to do for their own bodies and what they need to do for themselves, right? Because she's not in the business of telling people what to do. Okay. She's not telling people you need to do this because I say so. She's simply providing information, especially the patents. She's providing it and saying, okay, now you can make an informed decision. She's doing what the government and what the CDC and what the pharmaceutical companies should have been doing all along, creating transparency so that people can make informed choices. So this individual, Ron Kuchler, who's her brother, says, I am aware of how valuable she is to her followers and to the world at large. Therefore, I am going to allay your fears and say, she's fine. And when there's more to share, we will share it through our contacts. So maybe they are getting a lawyer involved to speak for her. Maybe there's another family member, which they are going to designate as the person who is sort of the moderator or the liaison between her fans and herself. But look at what Robert Malone does. He takes that tweet and he gloms onto it and he retweets it and he says, this is her brother writing about her health. Please heed his request that you treat the recent situation as a family matter and do not interject your own biases and conspiracy theories. You will only make matters worse. Well, who the fuck is Robert Malone to glom onto Karen Kingston's brother's tweet? He's trying to make himself an integral part of this family and trying to make you believe that he's part of the contacts that her brother tweeted and said, we will let you know through the appropriate channels what's going on. He's trying to make himself that person by retweeting that. That is very concerning to me. Robert Malone has also stated in other tweets that Karen Kingston is mentally ill, going through some sort of psychotic break, and all these terrible things. He has accused her of harassing his family when she has not. He has said that he feels threatened by her. I mean, this is an individual. Robert Malone has over 1 million followers. This is a person who openly stated from the very beginning when he went on to the Brett Weinstein podcast, the Dark Horse podcast, with Steve Kirsch and had that debate with Steve Kirsch a couple of years ago, openly stated that he's a defense contractor and that he's worked with the Department of Defense. There's some criticism of his background, that he's not exactly who he claims when it comes to the alleged invention of the mRNA. But what I want to call to your attention is this idea that he has the right to somehow insert himself into the family and act as if he is an ally with her brother. This is concerning to me. Okay. I don't trust the man. I never have. He's far too studied in his delivery. He looks like an asset to me. He always has. He blocked me, by the way, because I confronted him about this. And I said, for a man who lives on, a large horse ranch and you talk openly about your expensive thoroughbreds, why don't you just go get on one of those thoroughbreds and go meditate or something and leave us alone? He didn't like that, so he blocked me. So I feel very concerned about this, that he's trying to insert himself into the family. One of the things that was brought up in the conversations on social media about this situation with Karen Kingston brought us to another situation. And let me bring up that screenshot, or that screen actually. So let's see, is this it? Yes. All right. Can you guys see the Unite for Truth website here? Now, you may not be familiar with who Unite for Truth was, or was. This was Debbie Lusignan's website. Okay. And it's now well known. Claudia Stauber has admitted this, and other people have admitted that this person, Rose, was Debbie Lusignan. And we all know what happened to her if you're familiar with Debbie Lusignan. She was also a major influencer, and she's been an influencer for years. So she has been critical, or was critical, of Robert Malone for many, many years. And what happened was, suddenly her depression medication apparently didn't quite, there was something wrong with her depression medication, and so she committed suicide last year. I think it was in December of 2022. So this was her post in January of 2022. And then at the end of the year, I believe in December of 2022, she committed suicide. And I wrote a post about this, and I had all sorts of questions. But one of the things about the Debbie Lusignan story that never quite sat right with me was that initially, when it was discovered that she was no longer with us, the family did the responsible thing. They said, come to this website, or come to this, we're going to live stream her her funeral or her memorial, and we would love it if you could all join. We know that everybody was deeply moved and deeply affected by this woman. She was very influential in informing you about fraud in the election integrity movement. She's also been very important in the COVID movement. We get it. We may not agree with everything that she said, and we may not agree with all of you, but we understand that she was influential, and they took the correct attitude towards her fans and her followers and all the people that she had influenced. And they said, we're going to have an open stream, and we're going to make this memorial service available for all of you online and everything. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it was a huge personality shift. So much so that it caused many people to really kind of have meltdowns. Like, all of a sudden, they went from being, sort of altruistic and open and concerned and sympathetic towards her followers, to they shut everything down, and they attacked her followers with such vitriol. Attack, attack, attack. They went on the attack. And I thought, this is not normal. Something else is influencing their behavior. And I'm not saying it was Robert Malone, but I do know that she was critical of Malone. And at first, when it was first discovered that she died, the family was sympathetic towards her followers who missed her dearly. And they wanted to include her fan base in the memorial service, in the streaming memorial service. Then suddenly, they took it all away, attacked her followers. So this was really, really strange behavior that I witnessed coming from the family. Never, ever underestimate how somebody like Malone can infiltrate the family members of an influencer. Okay? He can infiltrate the family members of an influencer and convince the family members that maybe the influencer is not quite right in the head. Maybe the influencer needs their medication adjusted. Oh, look, I have the perfect doctor. I have the perfect psychologist or the perfect psychiatrist that you should go to and who can help her because, I have nothing but sympathy for you and all of these horrible fans, all these horrible, horrible people. And from where I was sitting in my 150,000-foot view, watching the fans respond to Lou Signan's untimely death, I saw nothing but kindness and care and compassion for the family. So for the family to turn around and attack them with no cause seemed really odd. And then, of course, Nadia, Lou Signan's daughter, did a thing on TikTok, which didn't get a whole lot of views, that said my mother's medication was kind of messed up. She was very, very sensitive to her medication. Well, how did her medication get tweaked so bad that she would allegedly want to take her own life? I asked the daughter that directly, and she then took down the video. So I'm just saying that never underestimate how somebody like Malone could possibly infiltrate a family of an influencer. Now, there's another woman, and you notice they're women, Karen Kingston, W. Lou Signan. There's another woman who has not been as outspoken against Robert Malone as Lou Signan and Kingston have been. And that's Naomi Wolf. But see, Naomi Wolf is smart. She puts a posse around her. She's married to a security professional. I mean, she married her bodyguard, right? So this person is protected, and she also is very good at remaining diplomatic. Her physical appearance changes. If you ever watch her videos and you watch when somebody starts talking about Malone, she kind of pulls a little bit back from the camera, or her body kind of twists and her face kind of shifts or contorts a little bit. She has a physical reaction to the mention of the man without ever coming out and saying that he's an asset and that he is not to be trusted. So when Karen Kingston says, I went to Florida and I rented a house for 3 months in order to help these individuals work on an autonomous basis to, enlighten them about their rights, work with local law enforcement, work with local judges, bring up the law, remind them that you don't need global tribunals for all of this, that you can literally work in your own communities to have these countermeasures removed from your health facilities, removed from contracts with schools and things like that. And she says, so I rented this house for 3 months and I thought it was going to be great. But after 3 days, I had to leave because every time I walked in the door, it smelled like, and it felt like I was being poisoned. And it smelled like raid, like she was being fumigated. So she, after 3 days and not being able to sleep at all, her eyes were burning, the back of her throat was burning. She got really scared, and with good reason, don't you think? So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how important it is to have a strong, secure network of people around you so that they are not influenced by an outside source. Your influencers and the people that you look up to and who have been so instrumental in informing you about the truth, I believe, have the best of intentions for the most part. Some of them are assets. Some of them are controlled opposition, which is a term I don't really like to use, but it's out there. Mike Benz is another guy he's a straight shooter, and he's funny and he's strong, and he's the kind of guy you want on your side. And his last name is Benz, like Mercedes-Benz. So go check him out if you haven't. He's on Twitter. He's kind of, you can go to Rumble and type in his name and you'll probably find an interview. So I would say go check him out. It gives lots of good information. Very brave. So there are good people out there, but I am concerned that, it seems as though this is a full attack on women. And now 2 women who have criticized Dr. Robert Malone, are now down for the count. I'm not saying that Kingston is, no longer with us on the planet, but what I am saying is that she felt she had to go into hiding, basically. And I don't blame her. So let's keep her in our thoughts and all that. Let's see what else did I want to talk about today. So when I say that you have to break everything for a reset, I'm very serious. This Maui situation is not by accident, as you all know. You know that the wildfires are not through climate change. You know this, right? You know that when you talk about having to break everything for a reset, that it's not just your communities and it's not just your sort of your way of life, but it's even you. And so there's just this real concerted effort to suspend your intuition, to suspend your thoughts around what's happening in the world, and sort of break your mind. Maui wildfires had these climate change embers jumping from household to household. Greta was right. I don't necessarily believe that it was directed energy weapons, Venus, and I'll explain why in a minute. And Tobit, I would love it if you could expand on what you mean when you say that Greta was right. And Matt, thank you for joining. Yes, let me go ahead and just find him, Mike Benz. And as I said when I first started live streaming, this is very casual, and I don't have a problem sharing other people's work and other people who I truly respect. So let's go ahead and bring him up. This is what he looks like. He is the executive director for an organization called the Foundation for Freedom Online, I believe is what it's called. And he used to work in the Trump administration. So, and as it says right here, he's on a mission to restore the golden age of the internet. So that's who he is. So check him out. And Talbot, I would love it if you could expand on that. So Greta is right whenever she does not say anything. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate you explaining that further. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that instead of looking at the wildfires and the story around the fires, because what was the last disaster that we all experienced? Was it Hurricane Ida? Was that the last thing that we experienced in the United States? And I wish I knew more about what was going on globally, but with the move and everything and so many different things that are right in front of us, it's difficult for me to know if there's been some kind of disaster, say like in Estonia or like in France or Germany. Obviously we know about, Ukraine and Russia and all that, but I'm focusing on what's going on in the United States because I'm an American. So I'm just focusing on that. So rather than looking at, the devastation itself, let's go back to basics. You have to break everything for a reset, right? You have to, you have to change the way people think. You have to break their mind. Um, you have to uh, break their way of thinking. You have to break their intuition. You have to break, uh, you know, their idea that they can think on their own. So for instance, if you're not getting wildfires and some of the most expensive real estate in the world, which Maui is a wonderful vacation spot. I mean, it's stunning. Okay, and it's all gone now. It's all just been, you know, lit up, like it's done. It's over. So now what they have to do is invest in companies that will rebuild it. So they're going to build back better, so they say. So build back better means that contractors, outside agencies and liaisons and marketing people and maybe even the military and global interventionists will get a piece of the pie, right? Um, so it's well known that, like, for instance, in our transportation systems throughout the country, oftentimes Chinese contractors are used to build the actual train cars and the railway systems for the United States. This is what Build Back Better is in the eyes of the establishment, right? So exactly, Talbot brought up the most salient point. BlackRock partnered with Ukraine to build back better. So war is a force that gives us meaning. And so war can include a place like where I live, deep, deep poverty, saturated with the poverty industrial complex, which are nonprofits that benefit from poverty. As long as this whole community remains oppressed, and as long as their opportunities are always just a little bit out of reach, they will be dependent on services, wraparound services. They'll have to go to meetings in order to get the badge, in order to pass the class, in order to qualify for some kind of stipend or some kind of program. And it's all marketed as something that's going to benefit them. But after years and years and years of this, they get used to this kind of imprisoned life where they're forced to be involved in a program in order to just live. So that's also a Build Back Better um, marketing campaign, right? Build Back Better for Maui. Now you're going to be able to get all sorts of global contractors to come in and rebuild Maui. They're going to see a piece of the pie. Insurance rates are going to go through the roof now. Insurance companies are making bank like you would not believe. There's this weird thing going on with insurance. It's like, for all of these fires and all of these hurricanes and all of this devastation, all of the insurance rates for all of these, businesses are going through the roof. And so insurance companies are building back better, right? They're building back better. Whereas like those individuals, those large cohort of individuals who are professionals that took the shot, who are either permanently disabled or dead, though their insurance that they had through their employer is actually losing money because now they have to pay out benefits to either the disabled or the dead people, when typically that cohort ages maybe 22 to say 45 are typically some of the healthiest demographics in the world because they have professional jobs, they have a good income, they can afford good food, and they can probably, afford to go to a gym, and they, you know what I mean? And they take care of themselves. So they're considered some of the healthiest people on the planet. So they're a good bet for insurance companies to have to pay them suddenly out of nowhere means those insurance companies are like, oh God. So their rates are going to raise up as well, right? So they're building back better all around. So I guess what I want to say is that whenever you see yet another devastating story about something that has been, destroyed and needs to be built back better, focus on the build back better part and focus on what that means and who's going to really benefit from it. And obviously, all sorts of people are going to benefit from it, except for the people who live there, except for the actual individual people. Corporations, insurance companies, contractors, liaisons, marketing agencies, people who have ideas about the way that the world should work. I guess the technocratic elite, I guess you would call them. They are all going to benefit from these devastating things, but the people never ever do. The people find themselves more and more oppressed. When you hear these stories about hurricanes and fires and things like that, that force people to, bug out, you're literally watching a wartime scenario where you're creating refugees in your own country. Let's see. Tavid also says, I think Ukraine had a good batch because the people who have come here, which is close to 30% of the Estonian total population, are covering up huge problems in job retention. That's really interesting. Huh. I did not know that. That's good information, isn't it, guys? So we're building back better, right? So this is all about the building back better. So, and I also want to tell you that every story that keeps coming, and they do keep coming, and they're not going to stop coming, every story is a way to traumatize you even more. Unfortunately, you are trauma victims to constant war campaigns. And the devastation that we saw in Maui and the devastation we saw from Hurricane Ida and the devastation we saw years ago from the Paradise, California fires and all of the inconsistencies and anomalies about those fires, all of these stories are eroding your sense of safety. They're eroding your sense of feeling like you're in control of your own life. This is what it feels like to be a trauma victim. This is what it feels like to be in a country that has been occupied and is under the threat of constant attack. And JP just walked in after his long appointment. He had to get our car detailed. I'm just doing the broadcast now, JP.
Yeah.
So
service, not details.
Oh yeah, service, whatever. If you want to say hi.
Hi everyone.
We're talking about building back better and what it really means.
I like building back better.
So and I've been on for about an hour. So every story has another feature to it that allows yet another type of industry to build back better. And sometimes I try to guess, what's the next thing going to be? And, probably the other day I said, it's been a while since we had a good fire. Whoop. And, they don't disappoint, do they? Here comes Maui, right? So, by the way, Talbot's with us today. JP.
Oh.
Talbot's with us.
Well, hi, Talbot.
He just said hi to you.
Hi.
I know it's been a long morning for you.
It's been a long morning, but hello everyone. I don't have much to say. I've been busy doing other things and I have to check in with my other job. So I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
So we, so I wanted to just say that every little thing is, and no matter how insignificant you think it is, it's not. It's part of this process to keep you in a constant state of trauma, to identify you as sort of a victim of war or a victim of circumstances that are outside of your control, and therefore, obviously, to control you so that you will agree to certain things that you would normally never agree to, right? Um, so, watching these people leave Maui and, suddenly it becomes this FEMA effort and this, emergency rescue effort, as if, you're watching our military, you know, head over to another country to rescue the victims of some of, some devastating effects of war. It just feels like war. It just feels constantly like there's war going on. And then you've got these smaller stories, these, very localized or very specific stories about influencers needing to go into hiding or suddenly dying because they're describing the wartime tactics, right? So this is what war looks like. This is when you undermine your enemy, you undermine people you feel threatened by. Um, Not to mention what's going on with, with this Trump indictment stuff. I mean, not that I am trying to lift up Trump, but I'm saying the process by which we are being told that it's happening is not like through the justice system. What you're looking at is a banana republic. What you're looking at is a coup. So if you could just get rid of all those people that are like, yay, Trump's going down, and then they shoot out these memes of him in orange jumpsuits and all this crazy stuff. Put your emotions aside and say, this is what a banana republic looks like. And it doesn't become about the man, but it becomes something much bigger. And it certainly will affect you personally. What else did I say I wanted to talk about? Yeah, so you have to break everything for a reset. People, places, things, and even your mind and intuition must be broken for that reset. So I've been on for about an hour, and what I want to do is I want to end with reminding you that let's go back to the beginning of this broadcast, which some of you may have missed, where I talked about an invasion that we had on August 4th here at the house in Pittsburgh. I was able to look at the situation and not be emotionally involved. And by not being emotionally involved, I was able to see clearly that I was not in any danger and that the invader was not there to threaten me, but there were other circumstances which caused him to break into my home. And, so, and through that, I was able to articulate very clearly to the dispatcher what I needed, what was happening, and what I hoped the outcome would be. So, what you need is first, you need to describe what is happening truthfully, and then you will articulate what you need. That's how it works with life. Try to put your emotions aside. Unfortunately, social media seems to be where we are all connecting and we're all finding like-minded people. And we're not having these physical connections with each other, these really organic, truthful, honest physical connections. For instance, Venus, I believe it's you. Don't you like to take car rides and show us the world around you? How many times have I seen you stream one of your wonderful car rides and your little adventures? And I've turned to JP and said, man, I would love to be in the car with her right now. Maybe we could stop up and get a coffee and drink our coffee in the car if you drink coffee. We could have a little adventure. And so I appreciate stuff like that, where you bring the outside world in to social media. Good friend Bridget, who lives in Alabama, does the same thing. She brings the outside world in, and many people do. But there's also a lot of people in social media who are tied up in emotions. And it's really difficult to not fall prey to attacks or emotions or just constantly being in a, in this state of needing to prove yourself. That's not the way the real world works. The real world is exactly what I described when I first went online. There is a situation. I will describe it. I will get what I need so that I can move forward, right? So I'm hoping that more time is spent in the real world. I know Tavet works with animals, which is a wonderful way to stay healthy and grounded. Um, and I know that there are so many people out there that are all over the world that have connected with us and brought a little bit of their lives into our view. And it's so fascinating and wonderful to see how everybody's responding to the different things that are going on in the world, because it can be very scary. But when Tavis says, I have perfected my mooing skills. That's good. When you go outside, it's quite a different experience than when you're online, isn't it? Your intuition kicks in. You're able to look at people's faces. You're able to feel the wind on your face. You're able to smell the smells, sometimes not so great smells, but at least you know that it's real, right? You're able to have conversations with people in person, whether you're asking them for the time or if they're done with their shopping cart and can they use it, whatever, try to have as much interaction in the real world as possible. It's so important. Because I don't want to see people spin out and get to a point where they're sharing, giving so much of themselves and just in a constant state of frustration or fear. That's not gonna help. So it's been an hour. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you so much for all of your support. And I'm sure we will be talking again very soon, maybe from a different zip code next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.